Our Story Production presents The Road to Our Story, spotlighting an in-depth look at many of The Road to Our Story magazine's featured articles. So get ready, for you're about to travel on The Road to Our Story.
Hi, I'm Jason Howland, and welcome to Speaking of Health, a place to help you learn how to live a longer and healthier life. You know, back pain is one of the most common health complaints in America. In fact, 9 out of 10 adults will experience back pain at some point in their lives. Here to tell us more about how to treat back pain without surgery is Dr. John Jakovich. He is a Mayo Clinic Health System physical medicine and rehabilitation specialist. Dr. Jakovich, thanks for joining us today on Speaking of Health.
Well, thanks for having me here on the show today, Jason.
We're talking today about non-operative spinal care. Just in broad terms, can you kind of explain what exactly that means?
Well, non-operative spine care, that's a good question. Most spine care for back pain and or other issues of weakness and so on generally doesn't need operation or surgery per se. The vast majority of back conditions, neck conditions, and so on really can be treated conservatively and non-operatively. I would say probably about 95% of these types of situations really do not require surgery per se.
Do you think that there's a misconception out there that when someone has some severe back pain that automatically they think, I'm going to have back surgery? But that's, like you're saying, it's not necessarily the case, and not often.
Majority of back pain and neck pain issues, including radiating symptoms down in arms and legs, typically over time things resolve and improve. And surgery is generally not indication unless a person really has, say, weakness or issues along those lines, or very severe pain in some cases. But you're absolutely right.
Let's start with the basics of the spine and what exactly is the makeup of the spine and what it does.
The makeup of the spine, well, typically in a human being we have 7 cervical vertebrae, and in the thoracic spine, which is your middle spine area, that's 12 vertebrae, and then in the lumbar spine, which is the lower part of your spine, that is typically about 5 vertebrae. The spine is made up of ligaments, ligament structures, facet joints, discs in between the vertebrae, muscles to give stability, and as well as myofascial planes and areas that can actually stabilize the spine as well.
Now, you mentioned facet joints. We're going to talk about those a little bit later, but can you explain what is a facet joint?
Well, facet joint is basically, they're small little joints that run in your spine from your neck all the way down to your sacrum. They're in the posterior aspect, or the behind area, where they have small little facets. They articulate with each of the vertebrae and give you motion.
And I'm assuming the spine, it not only obviously holds your body up and gives you posture, but it also protects your spinal canal too, which is very important.
Absolutely, that's kind of really a mainstay of our spine. It really protects one of the most important neurological elements below your head, of course, in your brain, the spinal cord and the nerves that go through the spinal canal there.
All right, I'm going to ask you a very vague question. What causes back pain?
Well, that is a very vague question, and I'll give you maybe more specific answer on that. But
Great.
Back pain, it can really come from a whole host of issues, stemming from poor posture, poor body mechanics. I believe those are like a very large portion of people that have especially low back pain, neck pain, that's not radiating to their arms or legs. Muscular stability is really a key component for a good spine, and stabilizing your spine with the muscles is really the key component. So a lot of this issue is maybe, like I say, poor posture, stability along those lines is a really good place to start with why patients are having pain. Other reasons are ligamentous strains, muscle strains, from injuries, improper lifting, so on, repetitive motions type deals that just accumulates over time. Other reasons for pain are degeneration of the spine, such as discs, intervertebral disc, where as we age, it's a normal progression where you have degeneration of the discs in between your vertebrae. But sometimes these kind of break down and give you a little bit more pain and irritation than you would normally have, such as a disc degeneration you can end up with a disc protrusion, or something we call a sequestration, which is pushing of the disc material back into where the spinal column, spinal cord region is, and maybe pinching off on some of the nerves as they exit the spine and giving you pain that could be radiating down into your legs or your arms. We call it like a radiculopathy, or some people call it like a pinched nerve in layman's terms. Also, just degeneration of your spine from a bone standpoint within the facet joints. You can get what we call an arthropathy, a facet arthropathy, or degeneration in that area, where it can give you actually localized pain in your neck and in your back.
So what you were talking about, is that the same thing as like a bulging disc, or I've got a herniated disc, those kind of things? Is that all similar to what you're talking about?
A bulging disc is really just a small area behind where the vertebrae is and the disc juncture, where you have a little bit of a small bulge, basically, as in the term. Oftentimes, people don't really have any pain from this. This can be really considered like a normal process of aging and so on. Most of the times, they're very non-symptomatic. When you get into a protrusion, where the disc material is pushed out a little bit more and maybe impinging onto a small nerve, such as coming out of your spine or your neck or your back, and then maybe giving you radiating pain down your arm or your leg, that may be obviously more symptomatic, and then often we can treat those a little bit easier.
So I would assume in all or most of these cases that pain is a pretty common symptom, but there are different forms of pain, correct?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can have what we call, as far as low back or neck pain, you can have what we call myofascial pain, which is really the fascial layers between the muscles, and people can actually have disturbances in these fascial planes that can actually give you significant pain, even to the point of radiating symptoms down into your arms, where you might think it's coming from your neck and it's really absolutely not. So that's one type of a pain. The other would be like more of a neurological type of a pain. And that would be, say, if you did have a disc protrusion or a pinched nerve in your neck or your back, where the nerve is getting irritated and maybe cause you shooting pains down your arms or your leg, often in specific type we call dermatomal patterns, are very common. And that can be like a stabbing type or an electrical type of a sensation. And patients really tell you it's a very distinct type of a feeling. Other types of pain are just an achy type stabbing, what we call a little muscular type of a pain that people can experience.
And besides pain, what are some of the other symptoms? Sometimes I'll hear someone that has back problems can actually make like their leg go numb or something like that.
Absolutely. We are wired that way for sure. Typically, if you were saying having a radiculopathy, where you say like a pinched nerve, these specific nerves in your neck and in your back, they correspond to certain muscles in your extremities, so on. So you actually could develop weakness in a certain muscle, which would, if you develop weakness in your hand, or if you have a foot drop and things, that may be an indication of something a little bit more serious. So weakness is never a good thing, and that may be indication for potential surgery option. Not always, but you might be geared towards that. Now, numbness and tingling type sensations down an extremity could also be related to, say, a nerve type of a situation coming from a neck or the lumbar spine. That would definitely correlate. So you can get some odd types of sensations in your arms and your legs originating from your spine. Absolutely.
So what are some non-operative ways to care for the spine and treat back pain? What's the number one thing that you tell patients that are going through back pain? What's the number one thing that they need to do?
Well, the number one thing for anybody in this type of situation, especially if this is your first time, or even multiple times where you get flares of back pain or neck pain or radicular symptoms and so on, it happens in a great number of us. And it's a very common thing to have happen. Treatment-wise, the best thing to do is it takes time to recover. Oftentimes, going in and working with a physical therapist on a conservative basis is really the best way to approach this. The vast majority of people with back pain really improve within about a 6-week time frame or thereabouts. Conservative physical therapy is really the gold standard for treatment. It's cost effective. It's very effective.
And when you say physical therapy, what sort of things are being done? Exercising, ultrasound, are there other things like that, or is it all just doing certain exercise techniques?
Well, it's really kind of designed to the patient and what type of pain they're having. So some exercise programs can be more tailored to somebody that has like a disc type situation, which would be more of an extension-based type program of the spine. And other soft tissue issues can be addressed with other exercise means, and also like in manual type of treatments as well.
So, Dr. Jakovich, what about pain medication? Are there certain medicines that can help with back pain?
Well, absolutely. And this can be tailored again to the specific person. Depends on their symptoms. If we're having more radicular symptoms, medications such as gabapentin, Lyrica can be very helpful for nerve type pains. NSAIDs such as ibuprofen and these types of medications are also very helpful in the short term for alleviating some inflammation. Occasionally, prednisone can be a helpful adjunct for treatment. What you can also do as far as treatment of back pain, assuming we have a radiculopathy, you can use epidural steroid injection. That can be used selectively if a person has an obvious suspected, say, with radiculopathy of a certain nerve level. We could target with fluoroscopy and an injection where the nerve juncture at the spine kind of correlate, and we can put an injection into the spine, that area, in an epidural space, and that often can kind of settle down an acute radiculopathy.
What about muscle relaxers?
In the short term, these can be helpful as well, especially when people are experiencing muscle spasms, which often can happen in an acute phase. So in the short term, these can be excellently utilized for sure. It wouldn't necessarily be a mainstay of treatment, and as time goes on, we want to try and curtail and wean people off these types of medications. And other types of medications that we've used in the very, very short term and in extreme cases, narcotics can be very appropriate, although very selectively and only in a short period of time. It has been, studies have shown that long-term use of narcotics for back and neck pain is actually becomes counterproductive. So we try to curtail that as much as possible.
Well, let's talk about prevention. How do we prevent back pain?
Well, prevention is actually the key of all this. Stabilizing your spine, a good core spine strength is really key. So ultimately, the stronger your spine is and the muscles around it, basically, to stabilize your spine, the better off that we are, and the chance of having injury or pain is much less, for sure. I always think of your muscles in your spine as being like the guy wires of a tent. It gives us structure. If we can keep our body mechanics more optimal, such as lifting, pushing, things along those lines, not to strain our spine, that is probably the best way to prevent things along with the stability of your spine with the muscular component.
And being active, I would assume, helps, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I always advocate a good back program, an exercise program. Often doesn't take more than maybe 10 minutes a day to really get kind of your stability going. An adjunct to that is a pool-based aquatic therapy program, which I think is a really good way to get your core stability in your spine, and just being active and walking, definitely.
And also watching your weight too, I would imagine, because your spine is holding the weight of your body. So
us Americans are, as time has been going on, we becoming larger people, and the back injuries and Back pain incidence, I believe, is probably increasing as well. So if we increase and improve, I should say, if we can improve our ideal body weight, it's having much less of a strain on our back and the rest of our joints as well.
Great. Well, unfortunately, we're all out of time, but I'd like to thank our guest today, Dr. John Jakovich, physical medicine and rehabilitation specialist from Mayo Clinic Health System, for joining us on this great topic. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Have a great day, everyone, and be healthy.
There you have it, folks. One of the favorite stories ripped from the pages of The Road to Our Story magazine. Let's have a look at another.
Music is the soundtrack of life. Memories are made when songs are heard, sung, or played. Hi, I'm Bill Bussey, and this is Our Story, This Song is for You. In each of these segments, I will present singer, songwriter, musician, who has already made memories for thousands, if not millions of people. Today's singer, songwriter, performer on Our Story, This Song's for You, is Charlie Roth, who lives on a horse farm near St. Cloud. Charlie has been singing and performing for many years, and most of the songs which you hear him sing are songs which he has written about his own life experiences. Charlie has a new CD called Tavern Puzzles, and we're going to see him perform the title tune.
She was good at those tavern puzzles, games that people play. He was a Rubik's Cube. They were randomly engaged. Just loved to turn and twist it through the night and day. Once she had it figured, the hitman had been triggered. Yesterday does just the blue. Pockets empty as her soul, throw it away. When the whiskey takes its toll, throw it away. The reapers on the road, misery's your only true companion. Circles in the dark, cigarette left a trail of light, in her eyes a spark. Sudden fame they set her games, dangerous to play. Once she left them wanting, the wicked ways were haunting him. Yesterday does just the blue. Empty as her soul, throw it away. When the whiskey takes its toll, throw it away. Reapers on the road, misery's your only true companion. Get tired and contemplate, perhaps she ponders on her fate. Jack's late wasted in her way. Can't stay back, throw it away. Pockets empty as her soul, throw it away. When the whiskey takes its toll, throw it away. She'll ever know is a restless soul.
This is Bill Bussey. Thanks for watching and listening, and watch for our next performer on Our Story, This Song Is For You.
There you have it, folks. One of the favorite stories ripped from the pages of The Road to Our Story magazine. Let's have a look at another.
I'm Bill Bussey at Our Story Studios, where I am welcoming Southern Minnesota's own Warren Nelson, the lead founder, artistic director, and resident writer-composer for Lake Superior Big Top Chautauqua. Warren, thank you for joining us today on Our Story, This Song's For You.
Thank you, Bill. It's good to be back in my home ground, my hometown.
Well, we know you've had an absolutely incredible career over these many years. Can you give us an idea of how it all started?
My cousin had a ukulele, and he was from Sherburne, and he strummed it one day, and I heard that sound. And before then, I'd been a cornet player in the Fairmont High School band, and which later on, Richard Scheer, the director, said, "Hey, Warren, do your best. It's none too good." And I knew that wasn't my answer, but I heard that little strum of the ukulele, and something happened to me, and then I caught on in the early '60s to the folk, as Doc Watson called it, the folk scare.
Right.
When rock and roll was leaving and the folk music scene began to come in, and I don't know, I heard a Kingston Trio song on the radio, and I sat up in my bed there in Schroekers Drive, and I instantly, like Coco, knew I was a songwriter. I just
Wow.
knew it. And then I started the next day, and I went and got myself a little guitar, a little cheap guitar from Montgomery Ward's store in Fairmont, and then started folk groups and had trios and quartets, and started playing and entertaining, getting up in front of people, and found out that I really liked it. I never thought it would be a career, because I went to college to study something else, but
Sure.
I slipped into it, and it's what I always wanted to do, but I never figured it would be a living for me.
And what was the first major important musical thing you produced?
Oh, I think maybe I had a little folk group called Nelly's Folk here, based on the equation of the New Christy Minstrels, 9-10 people. We started singing. And so we did concerts in the old Fairmont Junior High School here, that old auditorium there. And I think we did one in benefit for the Fairmont Junior College, which was supposed to be here but never happened. So that started to go, and then we began to get gigs and more gigs, and then my professional career started in 1967. You know about that, huh? Mm-hmm. When we took the group out to Medora, North Dakota, and played 70 straight nights in a amphitheater out there, which is still going on. And that was our, well, actually the first professional gig was, remember the old, the Leamington Hotel?
Yes, definitely.
Frank Plute was a great theater director and teacher in Fairmont. And Georgia Meister and Marnie Brodt and some people had met my group, invited us to a Christmas party. And Frank was there. He was a wonderful, wonderful teacher in Fairmont, theater person. He ended up, I think, in Robbinsdale later on in Minneapolis. And he saw us perform at Georgia Meister's Christmas party. And he immediately called up Gary, what was his name? I think Schaefer. No. Up in Minneapolis, who had something to do with the Al Sheehan Agency and the Edgewater, the Al Sheehan Agency. And he said, "Hey, I think we got somebody down here who's, he's got something going." Right. And so we went up to Leamington and played an audition for the Minnesota Turkey Growers Convention. This is for us big deal, Fairmont kids going up there. 3,000 people in the audience. We knocked them dead. So then we got our first pro contract to play Medora, North Dakota Amphitheater for all summer in 1967.
I should have brought my old Nelly's Folk albums. I didn't think of that today. You could have autographed those. You've done all this now. What can we look forward to in the future?
Well, I've been lucky. I'm the luckiest man alive to have my own tent theater. A dream come true, and a lot of support. And one of the last favorite gigs I ever had was this last summer at the Minnesota State Fair. Mm-hmm. we raised some funding for our own tent. I called it State Fair Chautauqua. We played my Minnesota show there. It debuted here in Fairmont at
Right.
the Opera House in celebration of Minnesota's big birthday. Played it 49 times in 12 and a half days. And, our 12, 13-piece band. And
Sure.
and I to continue that, and then to just keep going at the Big Top Chautauqua and travel around. And I really enjoy going into the small communities and doing these big shows.
Right.
Big shows in small towns.
Well, they need to see them too.
And then besides doing the evening concerts, during the day, we're doing shows for kids, school kids that are bussed in, be they elementary or high school or junior high. And some of these kids, their parents don't take them to theaters. And
Right.
we get to sing the sense of place of.
We certainly enjoyed when that Minnesota show debuted here.
Yes,
we
it
used
did.
that
That was a
clip,
long
the
time
Great
ago now,
Minnesota State
2000.
Fair too. It was all very wonderful. It's great. I agree. It's great for the kids to get a chance to experience some of this stuff. We have just a couple of seconds, so I want to thank you for visiting with us today, and we hope you have time for a song.
Yeah, I'll give you one about southern Minnesota, where I come from, where it all started for me. And it's still the soul of my home here, right
Good.
here, Fairmont.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Warren Nelson.
I'm driving the daylight down Interstate 35, southern Minnesota where I come from. I'm tired of all the snow of done, it's time to roll and go, southern Minnesota where I come from. I'm going down below, I get to do me a little show in southern Minnesota where I come from. On I-90 I'm doing 80, that's me speeding by Elberly in southern Minnesota where I come from. Ah, there's a girl there in Blue Earth I should maybe stop and see in southern Minnesota where I come from. But not tonight in old Fairmont, the home light nights for me in southern Minnesota where I come from. In the rolling green of old Martin County, in the warm farm rich black loam, nice to see the lakes, free of ice finally. It's high time I come home. When I get into town, I'm going to drive around in southern Minnesota where I come from. It's what I love to do, just to see what's up and new with you in southern Minnesota where I come from. Southern Minnesota where I come from. Over the memory of the tall grass prairie, where the buffalo used to graze and used to roam, where God still wallows in the sod and sings, follow the summer back home. New flowers break the ground when the little river runs. We forever young, spring is sprung. Under the dip of the swallows and the calling of the crows. Ah, you can't hear it in the roads, you can hear the corn stretch and grow in southern Minnesota where I come from. In the rolling green of old Martin County, where the warm farm rich black loam. Nice to see the lakes free of ice finally. It's high time I come home. In southern Minnesota where I come from.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jennifer Bovers. I work at the Family Practice Clinic at Palo Alto County Hospital. My subject today is diabetes. Welcome to Living Well. I have lots of individuals in my practice who have diabetes. Diabetes is a chronic condition in which the body has difficulty controlling the amount of glucose, which is a sugar in our blood. Glucose is needed in our body in order to help produce energy, but having too much sugar will cause some problems. The amount of glucose is controlled in our blood by a hormone called insulin, which is produced in our pancreas. In diabetes, there is either a problem with not producing enough insulin or else there's enough insulin around but the body is not able to utilize it correctly. So there's two different types of diabetes. There's insulin-dependent diabetes and non-insulin dependent diabetes. In insulin-dependent diabetes, that occurs in approximately 5 to 10% of all individuals who have diabetes, so it's a pretty small number. In those individuals, the pancreas is not producing enough insulin. It's part of one of the body's autoimmune disorders in which the immune system is attacking the pancreas for whatever reason. We don't know why that occurs, but we suspect that it could be due to conditions such as a virus or an injury to the pancreas itself. There's no cure for that type of diabetes, but if you adhere to a correct diet and activity, that you can extend out the length of that disease and decrease some of the long-term complications. There are several patients that have non-insulin type diabetes. In fact, it occurs in probably about 90 to 95% of all individuals that have diabetes. It tends to occur in individuals that are greater than 40 years of age, but can occur even younger than that. And so we encourage that individual get screening at younger age as well, particularly if they have family history of diabetes. In non-insulin dependent diabetes, what happens is the pancreas is producing enough insulin, but the body is not able to utilize that insulin correctly in order to decrease the sugar in our blood. As non-insulin dependent diabetes progresses, the pancreas can decrease the amount of insulin it produces, so then you can eventually have to require insulin to treat that diabetes. We see it most commonly in individuals who have other family members with diabetes. Those women that had gestational diabetes, they are at risk for having that non-insulin dependent diabetes later in their life. We also see it in individuals who have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or who are overweight. They have a high risk of developing non-insulin dependent diabetes. In both types of diabetes, the complications are about the same. First and foremost is the cardiovascular types of complications in which the blood vessels become tight and clogged with that sugar. And so therefore you're at risk for having heart attacks because the heart is not getting enough blood, as well as strokes because the brain doesn't get enough blood. Also can affect our feet because the vessels going down to our feet may not be giving enough blood into that, so it can lead to ulcers or amputations of body parts. They can have problems with their kidney because there's not enough blood going there as well, and so they can end up with dialysis. Have complications of not enough blood going to our eyes and can lead to blindness as the disease progresses. Generally, many people, particularly in non-insulin diabetes, never know that they have diabetes until they receive some type of screening test. But in some people, they do have symptoms. Generally, we'll see see symptoms such as fatigue, excessive thirst, increased urination, increased appetite, but they're losing weight, blurred vision. If you have those types of symptoms, then you should consider having your sugar checked. If you begin to have some of those signs and symptoms, it's really important that you come and see your family physician so that they can ask you some questions about those symptoms and then do some lab work. Generally, we do take some blood as well as your urine to check you for sugar in them. If they are borderline elevated or even positive, sometimes a physician may ask you to do special glucose tolerances test in which we give you some sugar and see how your body responds and see if you produce enough insulin to cover the sugar that we give you. We also will sometimes do a test that's called a hemoglobin A1C. This test helps give us an idea of what your sugars have been like over the past 2 to 3 months. In insulin-dependent diabetes, there is no prevention. It will happen if it's going to happen. But in non-insulin type diabetes, well, we can prevent that by controlling our weight, exercising on a daily basis, and adjusting our diets and trying to decrease the amounts of food that we take in order to not become overweight. If you are unable to come in and see your family physician and you are having some of those signs and symptoms, you can come to the laboratory or wellness program here at Palo Alto County Hospital and get a screening done through that program at a much lower cost. In insulin-dependent diabetes, often the treatment is insulin, which you take anywhere between 1 and several doses of insulin each day, depending on how severe your diabetes is. Other portions for treatment of diabetes is appropriate diet, and oftentimes we'll get you involved with seeing a dietitian. We have a specific dietitians here that can help teach you about diabetes as well as help you with a plan that you can do at home for your changes in your diet. Also, when we encourage exercise, and your physician should help to create a plan for exercising on a daily basis as well. We talk about treatment of high blood pressure and high cholesterol, as those conditions are often associated with diabetes, as well as working on weight control. In non-insulin dependent diabetes, we'll also continue to work on your diet, exercise, weight control, but oftentimes we're able to utilize oral anti-diabetic medications up to several years until the pancreas begins decreasing its production of insulin. Then you may require insulin late in its disease course. With good adherence to diet and exercise and weight control and monitoring your blood sugars at home and having good follow-up with your physician, it can be very well controlled, and the long-term complications can be extended for many years before you will see some of those complications. This is Dr. Jennifer Bofers with Living Well.